25th of October, 1899, Volume 2. The Echo of the Love of God and the Echo of the Ingratitude of Creatures. My most sweet Jesus continues to manifest himself almost always in the same way. This morning he added, "My daughter, my love towards creatures is so great that it resounds like an echo in the celestial regions. It fills the atmosphere and diffuses over the whole earth." But what is the correspondence that creatures give to this loving echo? They requite me with an echo of ingratitude, poisonous, filled with every kind of bitternesses and sins, with an echo almost deadly, fit only for wounding me. But I will depopulate the face of the earth so that this echo, resounding with poison, may not deafen my ears. And I, Lord, what are you saying? And Jesus, I act just like a pitying doctor who has the extreme remedies for his children, and these children are full of wounds. What does this father and doctor do who loves his children more than his very life? Will he let these wounds become gangrenous? Will he let them die for fear that by applying fire and knife they may suffer? No, never. Even though he will feel as if those instruments were applied to himself, in spite of this, he grabs the knife, he rips and cuts the flesh, and he applies it to the poison, the fire, to prevent corruption from advancing further. Even though many times it happens that in these operations the poor children die, this was not the will of the father doctor. His will was to see them healed. So I am. I wound in order to heal them. I destroy them in order to resurrect them. If many perish, this is not my will. It is only the effect of their wickedness and obstinate will. It is the effect of this poisonous echo which they want to keep sending me to the point of seeing themselves destroyed. And I, tell me, my only good, how could I sweeten this poisonous echo for you which afflicts you so much? And he, the only means is that you always do all your actions with the sole purpose of pleasing me, and that you employ all your senses and powers for the purpose of loving me and of glorifying me. Let your every thought, word, and everything else want nothing but the love you have for me. In this way, your echo will rise pleasant to my throne and will sweeten my hearing. End of the reading.
25th of October, 1901, Volume 4. Privation makes one know where things come from and the preciousness of the object lost. I went through various days of fear and doubts about my state, believing that it is all a crafting of my fantasy, and sometimes my mind would become so fixated on this that I reached the point of lamenting and regretting with our Lord, saying, "What pain, what a disgrace mine has been, to be the victim of my fantasy. I believed I was seeing you, but instead it was all the hallucination of my fantasy. I believed I was fulfilling your will by remaining in this bed for such a long time, but who knows whether this also has been a fruit of my fantasy? Lord, the mere thought of this gives pain. It frightens. Your will used to sweeten everything, but this embitters me down to the marrow of my bones. Oh, please, give me the strength to get out of this imaginary state." And I would get so fixated as to be unable to distract myself, so much so that I reached the point of thinking that this fantasy would prepare for me a place in hell, though I tried to snap out of it by saying, "Well then, I will make use of my fantasy to be able to love him in hell." Now, while I was in this fixation, Blessed Jesus wanted to increase the pain of my position by moving within my interior, saying, "Do not pay attention to this, otherwise I will leave and will show you whether it is I who comes or it is your fantasy that hallucinates." In spite of this, I did not then get concerned, saying, "Ah, yes, he will not have the courage to do it. He is so good." yet he actually did it. It is needless to say what I went through for several days without Jesus. I would be too long. The mere remembering freezes the blood in my veins. Therefore I move on. Now, after I said all this to the confessor, it seemed that he became my mediator. As we began to pray together that he would deign to come, I felt I was losing consciousness, and he, this is Jesus, made himself seen from very far, almost scowling at me, for he did not want to come. I would not dare, but the confessor insisted, uniting the intention that he would share the crucifixion with me. So, to content the confessor, he drew near and shared with me the pains of the cross. Then, as if he had made peace with me, he told me, "It was necessary that I deprive you of me, otherwise you would not have convinced yourself whether it is I or your fantasy. Privation is beneficial to make one know where things come from and the preciousness of the object lost, and to hold it in greater esteem when it is reacquired." End of the reading.
25th of October 1903, Volume 5. The Soul in Grace Enamours God. As the hour for my usual state came, I was thinking to myself that if the Lord would not come, I should try to make an effort to go out of it, also to see whether at least I could manage to. At first I could manage, but then my adorable Jesus came and showed me that when I would think of remaining in it, he would draw near me and bind me to himself in such a way that I would not be able to go out. When, on the other hand, I would think of going out of it, he would move away and leave me free in such a way that I could do it. So I could not make up my mind, and I said to myself, how I wish I could see the confessor so as to ask him what I should do. Then, a little later, I saw the confessor together with our Lord, and immediately I said, "Tell me, should I stay, yes or no?" While saying this, I saw in the interior of the confessor that he had withdrawn the obedience he had given me the day before. And so I decided to stay, thinking to myself that if it was true that he had withdrawn the obedience, fine. If then it was my fancy that made me see it, while it could be false, when the confessor would come, things would be taken care of, and I could try another day. So I calmed down. Then, continuing to make himself seen, Blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, the beauty of the soul in grace is so great as to enamour God himself. The angels and the saints are amazed at seeing this prodigious portent of a soul still terrestrial, possessed by grace. At the fragrance of her celestial odour, they run around her, and to their highest pleasure, they find in her that same Jesus who beatifies them in heaven, in such a way that it is indifferent for them to be up in heaven or down near this soul. But who maintains and preserves this portent, giving new shades of beauty continuously to the soul who lives in my will? Who removes any rust and imperfection from her and administers to her the knowledge of the object she possesses? My will. Who strengthens her, establishes her, and confirms her in grace? My will. The living in my will is the whole point of sanctity and gives continuous growth in grace. However, one who one day does my will and another her own will never be confirmed in grace. She does nothing but grow and then decrease, and how much evil this brings to the soul. Oh, how much glory she deprives God and herself. She is the image of one who today is rich and tomorrow poor. She will be confirmed neither in richness nor in poverty. Therefore, one cannot know where she will end up. Having said this, he disappeared. After a little while, the confessor came, and as I told him what I have written, he assured me that he had truly withdrawn the obedience he had given me. To obey the confessor I continue to tell the other meanings I understood on the 24th of this month. So the lady represented the church, who is infirm, not in herself, but in her members. But even though she is laid low and insulted by enemies and rendered infirm in her very members, she never loses her majesty and vulnerability. As for the bed she was in, I understand that while the church seems oppressed, infirm, opposed, she yet rests with a perpetual and eternal rest, and with peace and safety in the paternal bosom of God, like a child on the lap of her mother. I understood that the headboard of the bed that touched the vault was the divine protection that always assists the church, and that everything she contains has all come from heaven, sacraments, doctrine, and other things. Everything is celestial, holy, and pure, in such a way that between heaven and the church there is continuous communication, never interrupted. As for the few religious who offered care and assistance to the lady, I understood that few are those who defend the church with all of themselves, considering the evil she receives as though given to themselves. The room in which she resided, made of stone, represented the solidity, the firmness, and even the hardness of the church in surrendering to no one the rights that belong to her. The dying lady, who with intrepidness and courage allows herself to be beaten by the enemies, represented the church, which, while she seems to be dying, rises again more intrepid. But how? Through sufferings and shedding of blood, the true spirit of the church, always ready for mortification, as Jesus Christ was. End of the reading.
The 25th of October 1904, Volume 6. The word means manifestation, communication, divine union with the human. If the word had not taken flesh, there would have been no other means to be able to unite God and man. Continuing in my usual state, after I struggled very much, he came. As soon as I saw him, I said, "The Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us." And blessed Jesus, Adam, the Verbum took flesh, but did not remain flesh. He remained as he was. And just as Verbum means word, and there is nothing that has more influence than the word means manifestation, communication, divine union with the human. So if the word had not taken flesh, there would have been no other means to be able to unite God and man. Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading.
25th of October 1906, Volume 7. For one who receives it, grace is light. For one who does not, it is fire. Continuing in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, and there seemed to be people who wanted to crucify me. While they were laying me on the cross, I saw our Lord within me, and as I laid myself, he laid himself too. So in my hands there were his hands, and the nail was piercing my hands and his. Whatever I suffered, he would suffer too. The pain that those nails without a point gave us was such that I felt I was dying. But how sweet to die together with Jesus. I only feared that I would not die. Now, as they were about to crucify my feet, Jesus escaped me from within and was now in front of me. My sufferings took as those shapes of light and placed themselves before the Lord as though in act of adoration. After this he told me, "My daughter, for one who receives it, grace is light. It is way, it is nourishment, it is strength, it is relief. But for one who does not receive it, in addition to the fact that he finds no light, and feels the ground missing under his feet, remaining on an empty stomach and without strength, grace converts into fire and chastisement. While he was saying this, a torrent of light came out of his hand, which descended upon the creatures. This light remained light for some, and for some it turned into fire. End of the reading.
The 25th of October 1915, Volume 11. When Jesus can say to a soul, "My life, my mama." Continuing in my usual state, among privations and bitternesses, I was thinking about the passion of my adorable Jesus, and he kept saying, "My life, my life, my mama, my mama." Surprised, I said to him, "What does this mean?" And Jesus, "My daughter, as I feel my thoughts and words being repeated in you, loving with my love, wanting with my will, desiring with my desires, and all the rest, I feel that you attract my life in you and repeat my own acts. My satisfaction is such that I keep repeating, my life, my life. And as I think about what my mama suffered, wanting to take all my pains and suffer them in my place, and as you try to imitate her, begging me to let you suffer the pains that creatures give me, I keep repeating, my mama, my mama. In the midst of so much bitterness of my heart because of the many lacerated members of many creatures, which I feel within my humanity, my only relief is to feel my life being repeated. In this way, I feel the members of creatures being knitted again within me. End of the reading.
The 25th of October 1928, Volume 25. The soul who lives in the fiat makes all the divine works arise and puts them all in the field. Example, the welcomed one of the Celestial Father. I feel my little and poor mind as though fixed in the divine fiat. I feel all the strength of the sweet enchantment of the light of its truths, the enchanting scenes of all the prodigies and varieties of beauties it contains. And even if I wanted to think about something else, I lack the time to do it, because the sea of the divine volition murmurs always, and its murmuring deafens and strikes dumb all other things, and keeps me plunged into its sea to murmur together with it. Oh, power, oh, sweet enchantment of the eternal volition, how admirable and lovable you are. And so I would want everyone to murmur together with me. And I prayed the Sovereign Queen to give me the murmuring of her love, of her kisses, so as to give them back to Jesus, because I had received communion, and I felt that in order to please Jesus, I wanted to give him the kisses of his mama. And my always lovable Jesus, moving and making himself felt in my interior, told me, my daughter, everything that the Queen of Heaven did is all in that divine fiat that she had the glory and the honour to possess. It can be said that all of her acts are enveloped within the endless sea of the divine volition, and swim in it like the fish swim in the sea. And the soul who lives in it makes arise not only all the acts of my celestial mama, but she makes arise again and puts in the field all the works of her Creator. Only one who lives in my will can sit at the divine table, can open all his treasures, can enter into the sacrarium of the most intimate secrets of the divine hiding places, and as the owner, takes them and gives them back to her Creator. And oh, how many things she puts in motion. She makes them arise and places all the divine works in attitude, and now she plays a divine melody. Now she performs a scene of the most beautiful and touching. Now she puts all of his love in motion, and making it arise again, she forms an enchanting scene, all of love for her Creator. So she is the renewer of all joys and happinesses for her Creator. See, As you wanted to give me the kisses of the Queen Mama, you put them in motion and they ran to kiss me. It happens to one who lives in my divine will as to someone who entered into a royal palace, and the king who lives in it has music concerts, objects with which to form the most beautiful scenes, and works of art of varied beauty. Now the person who enters sits at the music concert and plays. Attracted by that sound, the king runs and goes to listen to the sonata. Then, seeing that the king enjoys it, that person moves on and puts the objects in motion, putting the scene in action. The king remains enraptured, and even though he knows that those are his own things, yet it was that person who put them in motion in order to give him pleasure. So it is for one who lives in my divine fiat. She enters into the royal palace of her celestial father, and finding many varied beauties, she puts them in motion to gladden, delight, and love he who let her in. And since there is no good that my eternal volition does not possess, there is no joy, love, glory that the soul cannot give to her Creator. And oh, how pleasing she is to us as we see this fortunate creature in our royal palace of our divine volition, who wants to take everything, wants to put everything in motion, wants to touch everything. It seems that she's not content if she does not take everything in order to give us everything, to make feast for us and renew for us our joys and happinesses. And we, in seeing her, welcome her, and we ourselves say to her, dearest daughter, hurry, hurry, play for us a little divine sonata of ours, repeat for us a touching scene of love, renew for us our happiness. And she renews for us now the joys of creation, now that of the sovereign queen, now that of redemption. And she always ends with her and our pleasing refrain, your will be known and reign on earth as it does in heaven. End of the reading.
The 25th of October 1937, Volume 35. The Sovereign Queen is the heiress of the divine will and therefore the heiress of the divine life, as she made herself a precious pledge in the creative hands of God. The great good contained in one act in my fiat. I was doing my rounds in the acts of the divine will, and arriving at the conception of the Blessed Virgin, I stopped to offer to God the power and the love that the divine persons had in conceiving this celestial lady, in order to obtain the coming of their kingdom on earth. My sweet Jesus surprisingly said, my daughter, as this Holy Virgin was conceived, our feast with mankind started again. In fact, since the first instant of her conception, she inherited our divine will, which soon began its divine crafting within her beautiful soul. In each of her heartbeats, thoughts, and breaths, our will formed with its creative power enchanting prodigies of sanctity, beauty, and grace, to the extent that we ourselves, actors and spectators, together with our divine will, remain enraptured. In our emphasis of love, we said, how beautiful the creature is when together with our will. She gives us ease to form our most beautiful works, and she gives life to our life within herself. Our love rejoiced and celebrated because our divine heiress, the heiress of our will and of our very life, had come into the light of time. And since by virtue of our will operating in her, she was all ours, exclusively ours. Looking at her, we felt our breathing, our heartbeat, our ever-burning, ever-loving love, and our motion in hers. Her beauty shone through the movements of her pupils, of her little hands, and in the sweet enchantment of her enrapturing voice. She kept us so busy and so in feasting that not even for one instant could we remove our gaze from her, So she belonged to us, completely our own, and our will was already hers by right. We recognized in this holy creature our divine heiress, and by possessing our will, she already possessed all. This holy virgin had her own humanity, in which she bound the whole human family as limbs to the body. So, in seeing in her the whole of mankind as she was conceived, for love of her we gave the first kiss of peace to all humanity, making it heir of our divine heiress, with the exclusion of some ungrateful who would not want to receive it. See then how certain it is that the kingdom of our will must come upon earth. There is already a creature who inherited it, and since this creature belongs to the human race, all creatures acquired the right of being able to possess it. This celestial sovereign, taken by love, made herself into a pledge in our creative hands, so that all could receive the kingdom. This pledge, possessing the life of my will, contained an infinite value. Therefore she could commit herself for all. What a sweet, dear pledge this holy creature was in our hands. By making her life and her acts flow into our own divine volition, she formed the divine coins to be able to pay us for those who were to inherit our divine fiat. And then my humanity came, united to the eternal Word. With my life, sufferings, and death, I paid a sufficient price to buy back our divine will and give it to the creatures as their inheritance. One act, one breath, one movement in my will contains such value as to be able to buy heaven and earth, anything that one may desire. Therefore may my will and my will only be your life and your all. Then I continue to sink inside the divine volition. What an enrapturing strength it possesses. Its sweetness, the attractions of its enchantments are such that one would not want to lose even a breath. My sweet Jesus added, my daughter, the prodigies of my will are unheard of. Its power is so great that as the creature operates in my will, it calls into action all that she has done before, uniting it together and then offering again to each act its merit, goodness, and power, as if the creature were doing it again, enriching it with so much grace and beauty as to form the enchantment of all of heaven. Then, as celestial dew, it invests all the saints, giving them the new glory and happiness that the work of the creature in my will contains. It pours this dew upon all the pilgrim souls, so that they may feel its power and grace in their own acts. How many souls burned by passion, sin, and brutal pleasures feel the freshness of this divine dew and remain transformed in good. One act in my will overwhelms heaven and earth, and if it cannot find souls disposed to receive such a good, it puts itself on the lookout, spying the circumstances, the opportunities, and the disillusions of life, ready to invest them, embalm them, and give them the good it possesses. The acts in my will are never lazy. They are full of light, love, goodness, and divine sweetness. They feel the need to give light to those who live in darkness, to give love to those who are cold, to give sanctity to those who live in sin, to give divine sweetness to those who feel embittered. These acts, true children of my divine fiat, never stop. They keep wandering even for centuries, if necessary, in order to give the good they possess. And since they are animated and armed by its power, they can say, we can do everything because an omnipotent divine will gave us life. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.